everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to a sort of pseudo episode of Final Rites. I am Angela.
And I am Jason.
There you go. And we are a player slash DM of the stream. If you're here new, that's awesome. Welcome.
Yes.
We have a we're taking a break a little bit from actual session play. Sad sickness and players not being able to make it today. So we are soldiering on and doing a little bit of homework because we have time to do this all the time. It's really great to at least have a little bit of time to fill out some of our World Anvil account.
Indeed. And, being so invested in this world and wanting to make sure that as much of it is communicated and available to the audience at any one time, it's a great privilege to be able to sort of make this a public process and sort of gauge what all's gonna sort of make it to the forefront and maybe what ends up on the cutting room floor. I'm not terrified. Are you terrified? I'm not terrified at all.
No, this okay, people know when they're going into a World Anvil stream that what's probably going to happen is a lot of brainstorming and a lot of like, oh, that doesn't work, we need to cut that. What's nice is I don't know how many people normally watch the show end up watching this, because we can talk about things that aren't necessarily going to be textual, but still allow them to exist in the canon and let people know super secrets if they're really nice and,
exactly.
and they behave themselves. We might say stuff.
Yeah, perhaps, maybe. This is wonderful. I'm so looking forward to contributing to the lore and world surrounding this lovely, lovely world that I've been so honored to create on behalf of Nerdsmith. But before we get to any of that, as per usual, we do have sponsors, one of whom is
potentially obvious.
Yeah, potentially obvious, but just in case there are a few people who are kind of scratching their heads wondering what this newfangled World Anvil might be, it is a wonderful world-building service that's provided by some dear friends of the network. It's fantastically well run, fantastically well managed, and fantastically well designed. World Anvil is basically the best tool for synthesizing creative information for authors, for managers in any sort of fantasy setting, be you a DM, a GM.
Any storytelling is very genre agnostic, which is nice.
Absolutely. It helps with homebrew, campaign settings that you're trying to figure out, helps with, any fantasy or otherwise, associated geeky endeavors that you might have where there are just too many characters that you have to keep in here. Well, World Anvil's there to help keep everything in order with wonderful pages that will be most assuredly on display throughout this whole stream. They specifically, have numerous programs that are available through guild membership. It is free to try. Yes, that is it. So if you're wanting to find a sort of feel out for the system itself and kind of navigate the ins and outs of it, once you fall in love with it for less than the cost of like a tube of tennis balls a month, you can actually
sorry, keep doing that. Always come up with a new thing you could get at a Dollar Tree store or something, or a Dollar General, I suppose.
Yeah. For less than the cost of like a good pallet of sandpaper, you can contribute at a guild membership, get access to all these lovely features that you can further your creative endeavors with. It's really just one of the best tools that I've come across personally. And as someone who for the longest time was using like Google Docs, the amount of versatility present with World Anvil is just mind-boggling. And not only that, but I think, Angela, you can attest, since with your personal experience, to their latest program, World Anvil Heroes.
So they are constantly updating the UI on the site. They are currently heading towards what I would consider a new version number for World Anvil. And along with that was a major overhaul of a lot of the user interface, but then also an introduction to Heroes, which is, let me fix that, which is, I can show real quick because I'm you can see my screen. It's a social media platform for basically allows you to, connected to your campaign, you can have almost like a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed of your character's thoughts and photos and all sorts of information that you might want to express through your character. So this is, pardon, it's a little squished right now just because I need to get it on the screen, so it's a little half-sized. But you can upload pictures. I found a lot of free public use photographs that I've done, or little photoshops that I've done. You can add journal entries, of which there is a slightly romantic journal entry on Jovi's thing. Slightly. I did discover that one of the things you can put in is Spotify playlists, so you can actually check out Jovi's character playlist on her character screen. I need to put in a track listing. It's one of the things I haven't done yet. Quotes. Also, this is the dark theme called Villains. There's also a white version of this theme that has some neat colorations for these milestone events, like this little love connection event. So you can sort of see, and there's this cute burst of color with each of them depending on the category. And so yeah, so I have a bunch of quotes and stuff and silly things on Jovi's character profile. You can comment on other people's character profiles. You can have conversations. You can have private DMs with other characters, which I thought was really cool. Associated specifically with the character that they're messaging. I found, just as a player who has done sort of one-on-one RP, that is actually a really great system if you're using heroes for your character anyway, because I'll get to it. It does include your sheet. It is mechanically useful as well. If you're doing DMs with a character privately, you can have that. You don't have to be like, all right, where in Skype or where in Discord did I have this conversation with this person? You have it all in your Heroes account. You can copy all of that and use it for prose if you want to make a journal entry of whatever conversation you had. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. So I was a really big fan of that.
Yeah, there's just a really good centralization process that you can have not only through Heroes, but through World Anvil more generally. So go ahead, check them out. And as I said, for the cost of like a good thing of sandpaper, you can contribute as a guild member with a plethora.
Less than the cost of a giant thing of hand sanitizer.
Exactly, less than the cost of that particular bottle of hand sanitizer. You can have this.
I can't handle it. Oh no, I definitely have to update something because Jovi has something from a previous character I was testing this system on. Jovi, I will have to correct canon. Jovi is not the Sausage King of Wisconsin.
Not a bit of lore.
Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that. Don't.
But so they also have access to her character sheet, which again, because I'm on half screen, it's not perfect right now. But you can automatically roll things and they show up on the top of your screen, so you can do rolls based in your character sheet. It's pretty nifty. And her equipment.
And also we should point out system agnostic for the most part, I believe. So
yeah. Yes, it's all sort of a la carte. You fill in what you need. And there are lots of people who have actually put in content already, so you might be able to actually find codes for things, or you might be able to import stuff that already exists for
absolutely
these things. And then when you create major events and milestones, it actually shows up in a timeline history for your character, so you can keep track. The best way and I realize this turned into sort of a Heroes commercial, that real quick, the best way I could pitch this to somebody was, you spend a lot of time when you're playing games with people, when you're playing RPGs, sort of reminiscing about what happened. And a lot of that can sort of be lost in the history. You only remember these really big highlight moments, and maybe only some of those big highlight moments. If you're tracking your character through Heroes, you can actually see the timeline of your character's experience. You can go back and see exactly what you were posting or what that character was feeling if you're putting that information into the timeline. So I really enjoy the idea of this being sort of a chronicle of my character's experience in the game. I think it's really neat. It does a little bit more than just having a social media account for your character, because it does tie directly into the World Anvil stuff, which we will be talking about now. The actual campaign and world building tools that World Anvil has.
Yeah, that we'll actually be demonstrating. But before we get to that, even, we do have another sponsor, a wonderful sponsor that we are so happy to be sponsored by, I suppose. How many times can I say sponsor in the span of...
Sponsor.
Yeah, however many seconds that was. But Die Hard Dice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dice. Do you need dice? We have dice. They have dice. We don't have dice. They have dice. And they're wonderful, as Angela is so marvelously displaying right now. You've got, I believe, polymer. You've got metal.
Metal and polymer dice.
Metal, polymer, all in just absolutely jaw-droppingly fantastic designs that you can get, like, with oh gosh, I really cannot stress.
You're speechless.
Yeah. I really cannot stress how wonderful the teams that we work with are. Die Hard Dice is among
just a bunch of really cool people that really care about what they are they're passionate, and they care about the people that are passionate about those things too. So you get a lot of you have a lot of really good service and really cool products from these people, and you should absolutely check them.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe during Pride Month, they even have special runs of dice that go either in support, in part or in whole, to the Trevor Project. Speaking of, as it is Pride Month, Nerdsmith ourselves have a few lovely little things going on. Angela, if you could go ahead and touch on that.
New Year's explosion thing, confetti cannon. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, everybody. We are here at Nerdsmith, and as members of Nerdsmith, tremendously proud allies and members of the LGBTQ community. We wanted to support our friends or the community at large by continuing to support the Trevor Project, who provides life-saving services for LGBTQ plus youth in crisis. Lots of crisis and suicide prevention services and tools and education for young people and adults that work with young people who might need help. And we are so passionate about the work that they do. We wanted to continue supporting them. So one of the things we're doing, which I am so remiss that I didn't add it on our layout, we are doing pre-orders for a brand new enamel pin that we are selling. It is a Dragon Pride pin. I'll put a link to the information in the chat. But they're gorgeous pins. You can find them at nerdsmith.org/pride. If you pre-order at all during the month of June, 100% of the profits are going to be going to the Trevor Project services. So please consider pre-ordering them now in June. If you miss out, it's still okay. We will still be selling them after the pre-orders, but that pre-order is really important if you want to give to a really great cause. So please do so. Oh, hi, Mad Rogue. Welcome to the chat. I see you there. But anyway, so it is Pride Month, and Nerdsmith is not only going to be selling those Pride pins, we are doing celebratory one-shot Wednesdays. So every Wednesday this month, we have been doing a one-shot, whether it's D&D or some other system, with just positive and fun one-shots to celebrate the community of Nerdsmith viewers and to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community. So tomorrow is Wednesday. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific, you can watch Rev Deshane, I believe, of the Crit Show podcast. He will be DMing a Monster of the Week game. The game will be called Torchbearers. And you can go check it out with a bunch of awesome community volunteers who decided they would like to play with us. So please check it out. And then next week on the 26th, yours truly will be streaming her first DMing on stream experience. I will be running a D&D 5e game to close out Pride Month called The Spectaculars, the family that slays together, stays together. And I am very excited to be running that as well.
I had no idea. I cannot wait to tune in. Yeah.
Yes, so Monster of the Week one shot tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific. We'll be sending out things on Twitter. So if you follow We Are Nerdsmith on Twitter, you'll get lots of updates when we're getting close to the stream time. So yeah, those are our big things. We've got lots of stuff going on for Pride. And again, check out the pins, nerdsmith.org/pride. Please consider donating. You're given to an amazing cause, and you are filling the world with a little more color with our snazzy Dragon Pride egg pins.
Yeah, I really can't think of anything else. Lovely to be supporting such a worthy cause, and even more lovely to have such great community events, especially on Wednesdays coming up next tomorrow and next week
on the 26th.
I'm really looking forward to tuning into that one.
Oh God, no pressure, just no performance pressure. You and Logan, both my DMs, watching me DM sounds terrifying.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. So anyway, we are dealing with World Anvil.
Yeah.
So hi.
As is indicated by the title of the stream and everything else, we're going to be working on the World Anvil page of Final Rites, the all tiefling player campaign.
I've been publicizing it as don't say shenanigans, but you can. It's
shenaniganery. I don't know. Something like that.
Trademark Nerdsmith. TMCR. So I've been calling it a Southern Gothic D&D game. That's how I've been publicizing.
An all tiefling Southern.
Just because we've got.
Yeah,
it's got that sort of Mississippi riverboat vibe to it. I mean, that's part of the conversation we can have right now is the tone of this world that we have worked on for these many
months indeed. Yes. I knew, especially with the premise that I approached Nerdsmith with, I knew that I wanted something that was a pretty, I don't want to say unique, but at least a novel take on the sort of road to hell or like hellish domain sort of thing, because all tiefling games can be, a very wonderful novelty, maybe a good one-shot or a mini adventure, but to endeavor to make a campaign of it, I really wanted to go whole hog on a lot of the style of it, because I find that as soon as you get a sort of image in your head of where your characters are or where your characters will be for the foreseeable future, you suddenly sort of transport yourself in spite of yourself into this sort of tizzy that leads to these very interesting locales and creatively speaking. And so as soon as I threw it to the group and they threw back just wads and wads of information, the more and more it clarified to become this sort of interplanar traipse along the river Styx that was helmed by these very, very grimy individuals with this atmosphere that just meshed with gosh, I cannot remember if it was Spirited Away or one of the other Ghibli movies.
It was Spirited Away. I threw a bunch of pictures of that riverboat in the chat.
That, and along with sort of my own familiarity with Westerns and the like, that just transported it into the territory of Southern Gothic, because it really is a tone that is so interesting to delve into, and subsequently trying to make a world that fits that tone is the real assignment. And it's made ever easier by y'all, like, just to brag on y'all for a moment, by y'all really being committed to like the sort of archetypes that I presented. There it is. That was that still serves as the image that we use for our sort of private Discord server, where we actually sort of can look to that and think, that's where we are, or that's where there's a facsimile of where we are.
I'd like to work on getting an illustration of some kind to really capture that mix of thank you, Mad Rogue, that's now stuck in my head. Proud Mary. He's just putting the lyrics in chat. But so I really do like the idea of maybe getting something sketched out a little bit, because I always get the vibe that there's a mix between this ship and like an old Southern Gothic church vibe. That's sort of how the background that I created for the show kind of that's the vibe. I literally was using stone church windows when I put it together.
Yeah, there's this sort of like, and that might be communicated more in like the internal architecture, where there's this grand like cathedral-esque austerity to it that you can sort of see palpably, and I like that sort of aesthetic further, because it also implies a history. It also implies this sort of not eternal quality, but this very historied and very storied aesthetic that's like, okay, well, this has been around way longer than I have. What's happened here? It spurs on further that curiosity of like, okay, I'm here now. What does this mean for me? Because chances are, if you find yourself aboard the Final Rites, as will probably be discussed at length during this stream, that's probably not a good thing. Probably not. Something's gone terribly, horribly wrong. And yeah, it's good to have a baseline sort of setting that informs the circumstances that you're sort of surrounding yourself in. But before we lose track of the plot too quickly,
too late.
We have, of course, the sort of bare bones page that we've been toying with over the past few weeks. I've been past 6, like at least.
We have a slightly higher World Anvil account. We are guild members. And that allows us to have some modicum of CSS control over CSS being a cascading style sheet. It's the way you make websites look pretty. So we have some control over what this actually looks like. This is not what a default world would look like. I was able to get a bunch of custom image assets to make this look.
Yeah, so this would probably be the tier where you have to spend like a little bit less, or a lot less than like a dinner at Chili's. I don't know.
Only a little more than these pair of scissors. I don't know.
Only a little more than that specific pair of scissors.
Yeah. Maybe as much as this cheap Target makeup. I don't know.
Yeah, that one. Sure.
I'm just going to look around every so often and grab something and try to compare the price of World Anvil to it.
It's definitely not as cheap as this water bottle, but it is so worth it.
It's depressingly close to the price of that water bottle.
It's depressingly close. I don't know.
On the water. For the water. It's depressing for the water.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't think depressing and our sponsor would. Yeah, we'll go from there. But
I think Janet will forgive us. We have to fill time, Jason. We have to fill the time. Okay, so yes, this is a sort of slightly more stylized design. I was able to use some custom Google fonts, and I don't know how expensive his water bottle was, Medrug. So we have some really basic stuff here. Let me zoom out. You can see us. Oh God, it's a recursive. I kind of want to see what happens if we get. Oh no, there. Now we're recursive in Discord.
Come back.
Or in Twitch. Anyway, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can kind of see what the normal look of this would be. So you've got 3 columns of content here. You can see some of your table of contents, people who might be following the campaign. We have a link to a timeline, recent articles that we've created, our Twitter feed, our active campaign, which is part of Heroes, and our heroes. so you can see our 3 characters.
Right, as well as a little directory to the Nerdsmith Discord, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yes, it's to the Nerdsmith Discord. So yeah, you can find us at worldanvil.com/w/final rights. I'll put that in the chat. So if you want to follow along, you can see stuff that's happening.
Indeed.
So yeah, we have a couple of things here. This is the front end, obviously. There are a few articles, not a ton. We've only been just filling out what we absolutely had locked down. And one of the things we're going to be doing today is filling it out more with a little bit more detailed information about some NPCs and maybe a little bit about the ship itself or the history of the ship. Let's see. Do you want to really quick look at the timeline and how we have the timeline set up for now?
Sure. Let's go ahead and get that.
All right. So the timeline that we're talking about is called Our Voyage. It's just our generic what's been going on in the history of the boat. Go to 100 and then go find the timeline. So this is our timeline. Again, I fiddled a ton with the cascading style sheets of this area to make a pretty timeline, which happens to be the colors of our characters, which I'm very proud of.
Totally by accident.
So we decided that because the blood war between demons and devils played a big part in the history of the world, that our timeline would begin in the beginning. Like, let's just give some context for the fact that fiends are created. That is the first inciting incident of the story.
Let's just say that was probably a big part of the existence of tieflings and the existence of the final rites as it stands in current day. I think that's a safe.
Many people consider this a bad move.
Yeah. Generally regarded as a bad move.
Yes. So then I don't know the timeline. So soon after that, the blood war begins after the fiends are created. And then sometime later after that, Final Rites is founded. One of the things that we were doing was we were dealing fairly loosely with timelines because time on the Final Rites passes so not so concretely that you necessarily know how much time has actually passed. Makes timelines a little hard to do, hence being able to customize soon after, sometime later. Those would have actually been dates if I had wrote dates in. We have a set date of when approximately the show takes place, Jason? That's correct?
Yes. As it stands, we use as a point of reference the baseline beginning year of the Dungeons and Dragons. I think it was established in the player's handbook. Could be wrong in that, but it was established as being in the year 1482 DR, which is the calendar that's used in the Forgotten Realms. In terms of the sort of timeline after that, it is sort of in reference to that. However, aboard the Rites, it is unique in that it operates very much like sort of our earthly time. I'm not going to pretend that I came up with a full calendar for the Final Rites.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm.
For simplicity's sake, we can say it's a 12-month year with 365 days. It's totally okay.
Yeah, exactly.
We can forget the leap year, not worry about it too much. And just for clarification, yes. It's 1491 DR.
1491, not 1482.
That's on our thing. I based on how we had approximately discussed our characters being on the ship, I just sort of tried to extrapolate back a little bit. So exactly, Mercy joining the crew is in 1491. So in the year that our game takes place, she has entered the crew within that year.
Yeah. That's really the sort of brunt of it in terms of reference to any specific dates. As Angela and Tone, time passes very, very differently aboard the Rites. You've got interplanar travel happening all the time, and a schedule to adhere to that is very, very different from regular conceptions of time and whatnot. But overall, it's just this really, really wonderful timeline that was constructed.
Thank you.
That I think at least gets the bare bones of it.
Right, and as we start, and one of the things I haven't done here is added more. We have a couple of plot points that I think are going to be valid to put on here. I would imagine the current storyline with the ship's defenses against, let's call it interplanar intrusion. That's probably going to be on here at some point, or at least our mission to fix it would probably be on the timeline.
Exactly. Probably a few months after. More, I think it was established to be about
6. I thought she was about 6 months.
1 to 6 months, like something like that. It's
sure. And that's again, how time works here. That's sort of the scale we're working with. Is like, it's,
yeah,
it's
I very much ascribe to the belief that you can write off most things. It's like sometime later or a little after, like having those sort of flexible things. It's really more about the characters and their experiences rather than the date, the time, the month, the cycle that the moon was in, etc., etc.
Sure. One thing I will just note for myself for accountability, I do need to fix the font color here on these items. It's going to be a little too dark for you to see. These are milestones, which have a different set of style. But I will make another milestone just after Mercy joins the crew to establish this is when the campaign starts.
Exactly.
So that you can say, all right, all this stuff happened before the stream began. And then the stream began, and now this is the status quo. So that'll be something that I can add later. We don't have to do it right now, but I can add it later.
Sure. And I'm, just as a point of reference, like, this entire timeline is... I don't know how to say it, but it's just the most sort of bare bones that we could get without specifically mentioning, like, these are the primordial entities, and
we're trying to give you a little bit of an orientation without overburdening you with detail. The
crash course, yes. It's my favorite method of relaying information. But yes, right? That's really good timeline. That was it actually changed a little bit from whence I last saw it, but
I updated it a bit.
You did marvelous work.
I'm a big fan of slight transparency. So there's a lot of slight transparency going on.
It works.
I had a question for you, Jason, since we're back on the homepage. This quote at the beginning, I was told that the quote attribution is a reference.
Yeah, for many people who might be of a certain persuasion to a certain genre of film, that being, I don't know how to classify it, but that being sort of the late 80s, really weird body horror, like extravaganzas. This is Vutsura, Commandant of the Hellbound Hearts, is a reference to the marvelous work Hellraiser, and more specifically its original novel, which was penned by the actual director of Hellraiser, The Hellbound Heart. So it's a little bit of esoterica that I threw in for good measure, because we're dealing with like demons and supernatural forces, and they're not fun. It's not fun. It's never fun. And I'll give Hellraiser that sort of credit. It's not fun to be evil, but
we try our best. We make the best of it here on Final Rites. But yes, I think one thing that is slightly missing, just because we have so much fucking fun. Sorry. That I didn't think about what the rating of this stream was going to be.
I think we can solidly say
we're having
18 and over.
Yeah, but because we're having such a good time, I'm not sure we have yet tapped into this isn't fun.
Yeah,
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, if only you hadn't scared that Triton to death.
I know. I'm fixing it.
Working on it.
Anyway, so all right, so we've sort of given you an introduction to what the timeline is. What do you want me to just like click through the articles I do have created so you can kind of see what we already have working with it? Would that be useful?
Yeah, let's, since we've gone ahead and established at the start that we really want to focus on at least a few of the major players aboard the final rites, let's start with the crew. Let's really just sort of knuckle down and bear down upon that as a concept, just to sort of get that at the forefront.
So under characters, we have the... zoom out a little bit so you can see how I actually designed that. All right, so we have it's a crew. There's a bunch of people. We actually have a Google document, a spreadsheet that we keep a lot of this information on. It just allows you to sort things quickly, so we have it there. But we are converting over to some of the information into this document here. We have broken it up into the 3 main functions of the crew: command, conservation, and concierge. Command being administration, conservation, or rather, no, I mean, command would be the actual military command, right?
It's a very very weird mix. With the command crew, it literally deals with the chartering and the actual sort of maintenance of the human side of the final rites, whereas the conservation crew is mainly dealing with the actual like maintenance of the ship's functions, be they for instance Bahazet, making sure that the engines actually function appropriately, be it nowhere in making sure that guests arrive and leave promptly for their stated purposes, and that these sort of connections are fostered. With the command crew, these are like the top dogs. Like, if you encounter them, even if you're not strictly military personnel, if they require your services, you better give them up, because if not, you might be talking to the quartermaster, or if you are really obstinate, the captain, which, guess what?
Nobody wants.
Not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. But yeah, no, as is sort of evident from the responsibilities that are listed within each lieutenant's sort of status, we have just a whole list of people who are assigned at certain intervals throughout the operation of the shift, with maintaining a semblance of order and stability. I have a question then. Would it be useful to, I've been meaning to, but I hadn't gotten a chance to actually write a little blurb about what each of the sections would in general be in charge of? I think that might be useful to have. So command, I would almost say, is this group of crew are sort of the officers in charge of overall ship function, combat, etc., etc. This portion of the crew is assigned specifically to the maintenance of order aboard the ship. They are the officers, the final arbitrators. They are the persons who, at any given point, can and will provide that sort of hierarchy that's needed for any disputes or any problems that arise within the ship. They are, for lack of a better term, they're sort of the officer corps. You know, if you need to speak to somebody's supervisor, you're probably talking to the lieutenant on duty. And if you need to speak above the lower lieutenant, you speak to the senior, then to the quartermaster, then to the captain. Sometimes the keeper can be involved, depending upon the dispute, and yeah, it's just really, they are the ones that are charged with making sure that the crew, more often than not, are kept in line. Not that they have no idea of how the ship runs from an engineering standpoint, but they are specifically concerned with the crew, like distributing orders and making sure that, you know, whoever is assigned to a particular place is there at the time that they promised they would be. They're like the worst managers, like just terrible managers.
Then really quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to edit article. And just, I'm a bit of a cheater. Because I needed to have something very specific designed here, I didn't actually use all the amazing like features that you can have, all the little document boxes. I used a generic article, which just has a sort of text box that you can add Blackboard code, BB code into. So what I'm going to do is go to the command line. I wrote a little something.
Exclusive behind the scenes, you know.
Well, that's what we're here. That's what we're here for.
Exclusive.
So I wrote, command, the officer corps. These members of the crew are charged with the maintenance of order on the ship. They are the officers, the final arbitrators, the persons who at any given point can and will serve as the authority for disputes and problems among the crew.
Yeah. I really think that to be a very succinct summation. And there it is. Like magic. It's not magic, it's technology, right. But you know, something like that.
But what's beautiful is that you now have a little bit of context for who the following people are going to be. Now, one of the things I would probably do here is, and I had sort of expressed this to Jason before we started all of this, was these are placeholders until this person becomes fleshed out enough in the story that they warrant their own article. And we're going to talk a little bit about at least one or two that have gotten enough screen time that they now warrant perhaps having their own articles.
Exactly.
So this will become a much cleaner list of people. The descriptions will probably go away because you can click into the character to see more information. But for now, you can get sort of a quick glance at everybody who is here.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's see. Who do we... Okay, so we have command here. Let's talk a little bit about conservation then.
Sure.
Conservation includes the keepers, who are tasked with being in charge of certain aspects of running the ship. But let's do what we did with command and talk a little bit at length to make a little bit of a paragraph for what conservation is.
Sure. Conservation, that's mainly concerned with the business functions of the ship, either the actual shall we say, trying to think of the word now and it's escaped me. The actual functions that the ship performs. So in terms of conservation, they are made up of what are known as keepers. So for the keeper of the hull, Bahazet, he is in charge of being a bosun, making sure that the upper decks are scrubbed clean, that he and his incubi or whoever is serving him at any point in the shift make sure that all sort of various accoutrements and like decorations aboard the ship are kept in order and kept clean, and that the actual functioning portions like the lights and whatnot, like he's the one that keeps the lights on. With Consternation being the keeper of the contracts, that's distinct from the keeper of the ledger, as until such time as certain deals go through, Consternation is in charge with making sure that all business conducted within the rights adheres to its adheres to its very high standard and is registered with within their sort of auspices, so that that information can then be handed off to their sponsors. The price of being aboard a neutral ground is a lack of privacy, and consternation really keeps that sort of as an ever-present reminder, making sure that no funny stuff happens aboard. We can see how successful he is very later. You have Eamon Gallow Dodger, who's the keeper of the engines. Literally, he is tasked with making sure that the ship actually runs, like that that their defenses are up, that their engines continue to receive a good stream of soul stones in order to draw from that sort of damnable power and continue operating the infernal engines which power the ship. Bailey Gallow Dodger, his wife, is the keeper of armament, who makes sure that security personnel have the appropriate level of armament that is required. This is basically the closest equivalent to a blacksmith that you have aboard the final rites. She really does keep a close eye on it and make sure that weapons are only distributed to security personnel and that they are of a very high quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Would Bailey also be keeping the are weapons not allowed in public spaces on the ship?
That is correct. Any sort of armament that is registered to a person, obviously you can't exactly take away a sorcerer's hands, but there are, under the auspices of Eamon, engines by which these powers might be either dampened or subdued, without affecting the crew, which is crucial. They're usually kept as sort of an off measure, like you never see the excuse me, the panels where the turrets pop up in the lair. But whenever they do, you think, oh, hey, that's what that is. And then you get blown away. It's sort of the same defense system. It's the ever-present threat of subjugation that is more often than not effective enough for people to keep their hands in their pockets. Bailey, as you said, sort of catalogs the weaponry, coordinating with Nowhere on occasion, just to make sure that certain swords or certain armament is kept under lock and key. It's basically the vault keeper at a casino, like just making sure that everybody's playing nice and that the actual valuables are kept safe enough to where the customer doesn't have to worry, but secure enough to where they can't easily access their giant poisoning, flaming sword, raging thing of doom.
Yes.
Raging poisoning sword, flaming sword of doom. I can't remember the exact specifications, but it was terrifying. Then you have the keeper of the ledger, who literally is making sure that everybody aboard is supposed to be on board at any point in time, and also logging their activities if they happen to do something very, very stupid. The only one that I would bump from conservation to maybe concierge would be Mercy, because the although she is under the command of Bahazet, as he is keeper of the hull, her status is not in line with the keepers. Like
the keeper. So conservation is kind of almost a subclass of the officers a little bit. They're managerial. They're sort of responsible for something very specific.
Exactly.
As opposed to sort of generic crew members. Okay.
Right. Whereas command crew is very in tune with the actual crew as it stands at any point in time. That they are the ones that are kind of their advocates. The keepers specialize in one particular area and are remaining committed to that area, even if it traipses over the responsibilities of other lieutenants. It's kind of muddled where exactly lieutenants and keepers lie in terms of shared responsibility. If ever there is a problem which lies in the domain explicitly of a keeper, that is their problem, and they are to use the lieutenants as a tool in order to help. So, for instance, in the maintenance of the engine and security, the keeper of the engines, Eamon, and Bahazet might coordinate, because the keeper of the hull has to make sure that the ship operates smoothly, and the keeper of the engines has to make sure that the defenses and everything also runs smoothly, which is why they were able to coordinate and gift y'all Beefcake, I think was the name of the zombie minotaur.
Beefcake?
Something like that.
Yeah. Zombeefcake.
Zombeefcake, that was it. Yeah.
Yep.
Are you proud of it? Hang your head.
I didn't do it. I didn't do that one. I wanted to call him Muffin.
But
because he was a. Anyway.
So yeah, if there's a big
Autumn was with me on this.
Yeah.
She's in chat. She was with me.
She's totally on board. So
here's what I'll do. I have the article open. Let me add this to conservation. And I'm going to control F because I have too much shit written here. There we go. So I wrote this for conservation. Please, please, please tell me if I need to adjust anything. These high-level crew members are known as keepers and are each responsible for particular mechanical, business, and logistic matters on board the ship. They act as managers for many members of the general.
And I would also add, comma, they act as managers for many members of the general crew, comma, and within their area of expertise can even solicit the help of members of the command crew. Yep, and area, and no, that was right.
Yeah, you're not right there. My built-in spell.
Grammarly helps.
That's what it is. It is Grammarly. Just sometimes it's wrong.
Oh yeah, can solicit members of the command. I think just capitalize command just to make sure. It's
sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, because it's one of those things where it's just making sure that because obviously somebody can be in command,
being a specific thing.
Yeah, a specific thing. But sure. On the whole, I think that's a very accurate description. Obviously, as you can probably tell, especially with the conservation crew, their responsibilities, their sort of descriptions, their characters are communicated very sparsely. But as time will go on, and perhaps as you continue moving up the ranks in the Rites, you'll find that it'll expand and become this, as you said, maybe even separate pages in certain cases. But going down, we've got just a whole bunch of fun stuff until Concierge Crew.
Concierge is my favorite. Has some of my favorite people in it.
Yes, absolutely. Concierge is really one of the elements that I wasn't hesitant in including it. I just didn't know from the wording of it how to make it clear that these people deal with those who would like to come aboard the Rites and who are staying aboard the Rites for any extended period of time. So I came up with this character, of a representative, Raphael Fife, this sort of very charismatic, like fix-it man, that would, on occasion, in conjunction with the keeper of the contracts, Consternation, make sure that certain businesses of a particular caliber, not calendar, if it were of a particular calendar, that would be really bad. We can only use the Gregorian calendar here. No.
Oh,
I was on the Chinese New Year. All right. Anyway.
So working with the keeper of the contracts to make sure
that a steady supply of business ventures that were adherent to the I don't want to say ideals of the sponsors. They're not entirely concerned with idealism or whatnot. They're concerned with the monetary aspects of it. So the concierge crew was basically assembled so that the guests would feel welcome, that they would be sort of the first line. They're the people that run the gambling halls. They're the people that grease hands and, make sure that your room service gets to you. They're the cooks. They're the low-level sort of grunts who work under the keepers. They're the people who are there because the ship wouldn't function without them. Raphael 5, in particular, as a representative of the Final Rites, serves as the advocate of the Final Rites for various potential business partners and interests, one of which you are eminently familiar with due to your relationship with Hamish Crestmeyer. You also have the steward, Emma-Jean, the galley cook, Succulent. These people are the frontline employees, for lack of a better term. Like, these are the ones that most guests would most immediately see. They are very present in the day-to-day operations of the rites, but if you're more dealing with like upper level or even middle level concierge or conservation crew, or command and conservation crew, you don't really have much interaction with concierge. Not to say that, they completely drop off the face of the earth, but they're, the hotel employees, the ones that make sure that the facilities are being used and the guests are pleased. And when, of course, certain things fall into place, that persons who wish to work aboard the Rites for whatever reason, for any extended period of time, like Hamish, like Liability, like the Dwarven Brothers or the Bioluminescent Drow, that they...
Who will have names someday, but just
very soon, I promise. As soon as you ask, I'll come up with a name. It won't be a good name, but it'll be a name.
It won't be Gork to Orc, who I still love.
Yes,
love
Gork
so
to Orc.
Who I think needs to end up in concierge. I believe that there's probably a distinction here between... Actually, this is a question for you. Is there a distinction between, say, Hamish's role and these Dwarven Brothers and Drow? Are they all members of concierge? Like, are they all contractors with the ship?
Yes, they are all contracted to work aboard the Rites for any extended period of time. They are there because they feel as though they can find their services have the most profitability there. They could just want to work aboard the Final Rites because they think it's cool. They might want to work aboard the Final Rites because they're trying to work off a debt. There are multiple reasons why somebody might find themselves under the command of concierge, which is kind of hard to parse. To put it, to put more of a point on it, there are those that are part of the concierge crew of the Final Rites. They are literally members of the crew that hold status, not very high status. Raphael, for instance, is a subset of Consternation's command. Emma-Jean would be, I think, underneath Bahazet in terms of responsibility or command. And then the galley cook, Succulent, and these other sort of characters, they would definitely be part of the crew, but their station is so low that they're almost... I don't want to say they're almost equal to the persons who are contracted, because the persons who are contracted have absolutely no say aboard the operations of the final rites. They have no influence in scheduling. They have no influence in logistics or what have you. Whereas concierge, even though it may be very, very limited, the crew can sort of dictate a portion of their current, not predicament, but their current environ. Like, if there is something explicitly horrible going on, they can sort of speak up and say, hey, by the way, there's a little something that's disconcerting. Like, they're the ones that can make sure that the ship, just as a business, functions.
So this is a feature that I guess is worth noting.
Yes, absolutely.
When you're typing in these boxes and you have articles that already exist, you can use the @ function to call an article that already exists. So if I want to say final rites, I can hit @ click final rites, and you end up with this section that says like vehicle and then a big gobbledygook of code. What's brilliant though is in the straight brackets where it says final rites, you can change that to be whatever you want. So I could change that to say the ship, and it would still be a link to the final rites article, but it allows you to phrase things anywhere, however you need, so you don't have to just keep adding proper names into all your articles. You can use it as just a hyperlink, which I very much enjoy.
Yes, and that's very much, again, one of the most wonderful things that you can do at World Anvil. If you wish to go ahead and give them a follow on Twitter, or at least check out their service, go ahead and do so after stream. Please keep watching.
Madroke has a question. Is there anyone working aboard the final rites because they think it's cool? Kind of. Like, Mercy's like there because she has to be. I think Nowhere might be one of the people that's like, oh no, this sounds great. Like, I want to. She voluntarily showed up. She voluntarily signed up. She had no outside pressure to do so. She was just given an offer. But she was offered. It was less like there is bad things that will happen if you don't come aboard, which is kind of where some people are at.
Yeah, this was not under threat of like what have you. In terms of the NPCs, like people who work there because they like working there, definitely among some of the concierge crew, they really do enjoy their work. Like, it's not like somebody held a gun to their head and said, you will work there and you will like it. These individuals, mainly sort of the nameless demons, are sort of happy to jump at the chance of not having to go to the first level of the 9 hells, or the outermost level of the 9 hells, to be on the front lines of the blood war. Like, they are happy to sacrifice their time, even if, incubi and these sort of higher devils might have status outside of the rites. The fact that they can go to sleep at night without having to worry that a demon tide will wash over them and their soul will be like yo-yoed back and forth between existence and non-existence, that's just a good thing for a good portion of people. In terms of those amidst the concierge crew, the contracted members, on some level, I think they have to at least be comfortable with the idea of, this is my workspace now, this is where we are, this is what I'm doing, which obviously can be very easy for some people. I think I described when Mercy was visiting Liability, this like armor-clad, like obviously demonic, or at least devilish or devil-touched cleric who oversaw a portion of the tent space that Liability had occupied, and she, or they, whoever they were, they obviously would be more comfortable, would be more ready to acclimate, and might even come to enjoy the space. I mean, it's the opportunity to be aboard a cruise ship, or the most evil
A
equivalent
hellish
of a
cruise ship. I mean, that's attractive to
So-
some people.
So a carnival cruise ship. No.
Wow.
Weren't they
It's
the
like
ones?
saying an evil airline. You mean Delta?
You- Oh, I would have gone with Southwest.
Or Spirit. I mean, they're all
So
kind of
how
terrible.
many
It's like
other-
It's like ISPs. They're all terrible. There's no good.
So how many sponsorships can we burn as this stream
Man,
goes
we're
on?
not going to get that Comcast bench.
Well,
I
I mean,
thought we were so close. We were so
yeah,
close to it.
yeah. Their email was like all almost there, and then it got eaten up.
Comcast at 666.com.
Also, hello, Ray, dropping in chat.
Please forgive me just scrolling through here trying to fix
Yes, as
this is me just trying to like be okay. I saw I didn't have spaces in these
there was some
spots.
part where it was maybe like there was something
So-
I missed.
So I'm gonna adjust this a little bit, but is this a fair way to phrase it that Hamish, the Russian dwarven brothers, and the blue bioluminescent drow are contracted merchants? Is that a fair way to describe them?
Yes, that is a more than adequate way to describe them. They are contracted merchants. Same, not the same as liability, because Final Rites does have an official chaplain, who is liability, obviously. But there are other contracted persons who can practice healing, some of which might come from celestial influences. In fact, liability specifically is, and this is meta knowledge, I don't know how many interactions you might have had with him, but he is an adherent of the Path of Light, which I believe was in the Eberron campaign. It was sort of this philosophical thing that introduced itself as a domain that was more about self-improvement and very positive philosophy. Mechanically, in terms of this game, the Path of Light takes on that sort of mystic, like, oh, I can actually heal people. It's not just these sort of meditative questions. And I think even in Eberron, or whichever one the Path of Light originated from, there was elements of that, but I explicitly wanted to make it to where there was this holy influence that was literally a part of the crew, which you would think wouldn't be the case. Like goodness and mercy and all that. Well, the concepts of goodness and mercy, I should clarify.
I was gonna say, who are goodness and mercy?
The concepts of goodness and mercy are not perhaps first amidst the concerns of the sponsors, but that doesn't mean that they shall eschew talent where they see it.
What would you consider Jovi then? Jovi's position on the ship is very nebulous for me right now. She is technically apprenticed to Hamish, but she also signed a contract, so I don't know if she'd technically be under the contracted merchants.
I will clarify, because another bit of meta knowledge for you: the trio of Russian dwarven brothers actually have their families aboard the ship. Like their cart is actually full to the brim with like their wives and wives and romantic partners. Their sort of family dynamics still play out.
Are there children on the boat? Hold on.
You'll have to find
Are
out.
there dwarf children? Oh my god, there might be dwarf children on top of the boat. I'm done. I'm so happy.
So obviously you cannot classify them as contracted merchants. However, they are the responsibility of the contracted merchants. So they are...
They'd be I'd say they'd be passengers aboard the ship.
Yeah.
In association with that merchant.
Exactly. And any...
Dependents?
Yeah, basically. Like there's this list of dependents that they have to, as merchants, sort of claim. So I think that would make Jovi, unless she contracted explicitly, as a separate entity, like, no, I work with Hamish, but I'm entering into this contract with you, then she would be subsumed, as she is his apprentice, as to being basically that sort of dependent status.
Okay.
Given
I had imagined she'd actually signed a contract, at least part of in my thought about her backstory, that like she had sought out a contract with the Final Rites because someone sort of like nudged, you should go do that. That's a safe thing to go do. But you and I hadn't talked really at length about her backstory, so
until such time as you think it inappropriate, I would say that she would be a contracted merchant. Just straight off the bat, just because that would establish her as responsible for her own actions, and in the context of the ship itself, making sure you know who to hold to the fire is paramount, because you have some people that, especially in Demon and Devil Land, otherwise known as the Abyss or the Hells, that'll weasel their way out of it. They'll try to do something very devious and then finagle some legal terminology, and suddenly they face no consequence. Being familiar with this, the sponsors would be adamant, and Consternation would be absolutely adamant, that any person who seeks to do business explicitly aboard the Rites does so as a sanctioned contracted merchant.
Okay.
That actually could be an interesting title, that you are known as the Sanctioned.
Sure, different than passengers.
Yeah, different than passengers. And even then it could be sanctioned passengers. If you are a sanctioned passenger, that means that even though you are just aboard the ship, you're still adherent to the terms and conditions of whoever you are sanctioned to. So you've got little dwarf babies sticking, I don't know, motivation crystals up their noses or something. Suddenly, you gotta stop that. Is it their fault? They were wandering.
There's no way you would know this, but historically from a previous campaign, I have a soft spot for dwarven children that are acting a
Good to know that I have a good weak point to exploit. Sorry,
No, I can shut it down.
I'm 12. I just looked at what you searched up for succulent. It's just suck.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't gonna. Okay, I'd be lying if I said I remembered how to spell succulent real quick.
Really?
I was like, hold on, what am
I will say I'm a fan. If anybody watching, if you haven't gotten the hint now, I'm a big fan of virtue names amongst tieflings. I just find them to be so compelling to a character and to a concept. Like, it's just marvelous in my opinion. So being able,
Me too. One of my favorite tieflings' name was Poetry.
Yeah.
She was a bard.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I am. That is a cultural detail that I absolutely love with tieflings. So I fully. Yes, Mad Rogue, right here. You're watching live as Jason gets inspired for the campaign. That is kind of the point of all this, is getting some work done, but then also musing on the campaign as a whole, and you might discover something you didn't expect.
Exactly. And as going throughout, it's just been really marvelous time to sort of be inspired. And no, that's a good description of responsibilities.
I felt like the period really just took it home.
Yeah. But
it's her self-imposed responsibility to keep people off the boat.
It's not even
preferably over the rail.
Yeah, exactly. It's, again, not even her job description. That's just what she does. Oh boy.
So the other thing that I'm noticing here that I had forgotten to mention, when you make those links, if you add an excerpt or a short description in the article, they will show up as pop-ups when you hover over the text. So what that allows you to do is to create cross references in an article without forcing someone to like go down the rabbit hole of, okay, who's that? Okay, well, who is that? Okay, well, what is that? Like just having to keep drilling down. This allows you to give a little bit of a blurb preview of what the thing is. So if somebody just wants to get a cursory concept of what you're talking about, they don't have to keep clicking in. They can see real quick who or what you're talking about.
Right.
So for example, Mercy, for the heroes in the campaign, I've got race, class, and subclass, so that you at least get a concept of what they are. Jovi being a tiefling mixologist, Mercy being a tiefling monk, Way of the Drunken Fist, and Nowhere is the tiefling inquisitive rogue. So you can just hover over them and see that. And then Final Rites, we can obviously adjust this if needed. I just have it labeled as the Ship of Lost Souls. But as these characters start getting articles, we can do something like, for example, Jovi, apprentice to the master mixologist. I can link that to Hamish's article, and it'll say, it'll have information about him in there. But yeah, so I really like that feature as a wiki feature. It's really, really nice to have that in your World Anvil articles. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, honestly, it really does. Again, as you said, it prevents that sort of drill down effect whenever it comes to some other wikias where you just...
Well, and that's like real world wikis. You run down that rabbit hole. At least fictional wikis, it's even more intense.
It's even more prominent. Yeah.
How many proper nouns do you have?
Oh, so many. How many little blue hyperlinks do you find in any sort of opening paragraph? Even an opening paragraph can just get you lost. But with this, it's just that, as you said, little...
I will say, so Jason has assigned face claims to a number of characters, and I have the face claims listed here. It is entirely up to you, Jason, if you would like to maintain these. If you would like to keep them here, I'm happy to keep them here, because they are a fun little bit of connection to real world and give people good visuals. Until such a time that we had any art to go along with these characters, I think having the face claims is slightly useful.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. That's why I sort of actually wanted to include them.
And Mad Rogue, I will talk about that in a minute. I see your question in the chat, and we will talk about that. So I have a link. I just found something on Google and linked it to the picture, so that you get a sense of what those people look like. I am a big fan. That Revelry looks like Travis Willingham. Anyway,
yeah,
there's a number of them in here that I'm like, that's awesome. That's such a good choice.
Yeah, I will say, going back to Revelry, I'm not afraid to admit, in the first session, I absolutely just screwed up in terms of character description. I it was so terrible. So Revelry was originally the 5th lieutenant of the Rites. I had this sort of fleshed out in my head as somebody who was very aloof and whatnot. And then I switched it with the description of Exceptional, who was the 1st lieutenant of the Rites. And so I suddenly had to kind of retcon and actively switch this part of my head. And to be perfectly honest, I actually love the idea that this person who does have this internal brightness about them is suddenly the most as is listed there, the 3rd in command, the senior amongst all lieutenants, assigned the first shift, given preference towards all other sort of matters. So yeah, it's just it was, however unintentional it was, I'm so appreciative that now there's this sort of characterful difference that deviated from my original kind of thought process of it. So yeah, rolling with mistakes is just a fun time for everybody.
It is all okay. All right, so just to answer Mad Rogue's question really quick, So the mixologist is actually a reflavoring of a custom class that I found on DM's Guild.
Yeah.
It's called the
Reflavoring. Reflavoring is.
I know. I've never not been able to say it. I know. I'm aware. It's called the Gastronome, and it is an entirely new class. It's not a subclass. Entirely new character class by Jackie Lang. And it is, in that version, technically a chef, a culinary magic chef. And the, thank you, Logan, Gastronomicon. Anyway. So the Gastronome uses meals and hors d'oeuvres. Rather, hors d'oeuvres are kind of like the cantrips, and meals are sort of the spells that you can add different flavors to your meal service. The flavors are just different spell effects, and what you can do is you can start combining spell effects into your drinks that you serve people. Or not drinks, sorry, meals that you serve people. As we were talking about this idea of a ship with sort of a casino vibe to it, I thought it would be really cool to play a bartender, but a mixologist is sort of like the fancy Prohibition era, because I had described Jovi as sort of being a fantasy flapper. And so I found this Gastronome class and thought, oh, it would be really cool to restructure this, or at least just rephrase stuff to make it about alcoholic drinks instead of about food. So I have an entire rewrite of the Gastronome class that I'm keeping on my person, not on my person, but I'm keeping it privately because I really respect Jackie. He did an incredible job with the Gastronome class. Highly recommend it. It's $2 to get this. It's really, really good. He's very responsive on DM's Guild. We had a lot of back and forth, sort of adjusting some things that I might have found, and yeah, so it was really, really cool working with him. And so I've got this mixologist variant. I don't know if it's ever going to get released. I'd love to. I'm just waiting to hear and see if he might be down for that. And so I renamed everything. I've got my drinks that I got to, that's all mine. And what I might do here is at least have her drinks listed. Maybe not the spell effects, but at least the drinks with the descriptions. So you can find, I had a lot of fun naming them and all the different flavors. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I highly recommend it. They are, I believe Jackie did a little dedication, or not a dedication, but he based one, I think my subclass, there are subclasses within the Gastronome. I think he based it off of not Alton Brown, gentleman who passed away recently.
Oh yeah, no, not Alton Brown, and I'm trying to.
No, he did. He had a show. He went to go. He would. Yes, Anthony Bourdain. Thank you, Logan. Yes. It's based off Anthony Bourdain. It's called The Revolutionist. There's also the galley, or the galley cook, or the military cook. So it's about serving lots of people. The Revolutionist is about adding more flavors and being more experimental with the way your flavors mix. You get to add more spell effects to your stuff. You're welcome, Jason. Let's have all the spell effects in my drinks. And then there's another one that's I don't remember what the other one is. But so there's different ways of dealing with the very cool custom class. I will put the mixologist into the World Anvil, at least some of the ideas of the mixologist into it, because partly we'll be building out Hamish, and the mixologists, at least in this world, kind of have their own, like, there's hints of their own lore, how they work, what they do, which is distinct from the Gastronome, because I played around with the origins of it, or the equipment that you would use to do it, so we can build our own lore on what a mixologist is.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that is the not so short explanation for what a mixologist is and why Jovi is one.
Yeah, and it's really just been a joy to see the mechanics sort of play out, and I really do hope.
Surprising you has been fun.
Yeah, I really do hope, honestly, that that class that we get back in touch with. Oh gosh, what's the name again?
Jackie Lang.
Jackie Lang. I do hope that we get back in touch, because it would be marvelous to have the rules that you've written in conjunction with her or with them put out in a proper form. So yeah.
Yeah, I would like so too. We'll see how it goes.
Long way of saying a mixologist is what Joby is.
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Joby's a reskinning of an existing homebrew class called the Gastronome. So yeah, with that, do we want to start working on a character we can show? I guess there's one other section which I haven't done a ton with. It's literally just an info dump. Jason had a sort of story Bible for us to work off of when we first were planning our characters, and it included a lot of shockingly detailed elements about the logistics on the ship, including a watch cycle for how I'm sure at some point this might come into play, but the idea that he at least has reference for who is going to be around at different times. Presumably, Jason, you've got at least a cheat sheet about who's on what teams, so that you can say, okay, it's this time, these people are going to be around.
Unfortunately, yes.
If it would be useful at all, I'd love to get those names, because then I can put it in here. I can say these are the people on team 1, these are the people on team 2, unless that is something you're keeping close to the chest on purpose. If that is the case, that's fine.
Well, the only ones that really adhere to the team 1, team 2, team 3 sort of things that occur with any regularity would be the lieutenants on duty. So if scrolling back up to the command crew, you can see that, for example, the first lieutenant, Revelry, is assigned to the first ship, team 1. So
that's very easy to remember.
Yeah, so going back down, since it goes by threes, the first lieutenant and the fourth lieutenant, so this would be Revelry and Ophelia Fife, would, going back down, I believe, be in the graveyard shift and midday. So from like 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. or 400 to 800, going into, I want to say, 2 to 6, not 2 to 6, 14 to 1600. I want to see if my math's right. Hang on. Good.
I made a mistake that I think I'm going to rectify here. I put them in order of lieutenancy, like what their numbers were, and what I actually should have done was originally pair them up. So the first and the fourth lieutenant, second and the fifth lieutenant, third and the sixth lieutenant. So I'm going to actually adjust them on this page so that they're 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right. So that you can see them next to each other, since I imagine that they will be more often than not interacting with each other.
Until such time as they are either demoted for whatever reason, which rarely happens, or there is some sort of complication which removes them from their office, be that death or what have you. It's just it really does depend on multitude of things going right for you folks.
I'm putting it in a notepad so that I can deal with it faster.
Sure.
than
sure, absolutely.
But I will fix it and I will put it in.
Absolutely. But you've done a marvelous job with the formatting so far, generally with this, and being able to contribute to it.
I appreciate that.
In very small ways, with whatever bits of lore that I sort of scatter about, making sure that it gets on to there is just something that really I think brings this world to more of a living state, which is so fantastic, not only as a DM, but I'm sure as players you appreciate that, hey, we actually see very clearly, like, not even from our own notes, we're able to go back and get a little refresher course throughout the whole thing. So yeah, it's just really wonderful to be a part of, and
I am very glad that this is effective and looks good.
You've succeeded. Aha.
So second goes with fifth,
All the details, indeed, yes.
Okay, be real quick. I'm pretty fast at this. And then third goes with sixth.
Just because I want to be nice, thank you everyone who has joined us at the current moment. If you're catching us on YouTube or catching us on VOD, hi.
Hold on.
Very good to have your eyes on here, but also very good to... Oh dear.
I'm gonna fix it. It's fine.
It's fine. Don't look. It's very good to have your eyes here. You can join us live, alternating Tuesdays at 2 p.m. CST, which is a whole bunch of other time zones, 4 p.m. EST.
Noon Pacific is the easiest way to say it. So
noon Pacific. You can catch us at noon Pacific on alternating Tuesdays. It's a bi-weekly thing. This is not our usual fare. This is something that we are lovingly taking on, as this is a responsibility that we've been meaning to wrangle for a little while. And unfortunately, due to illness and other circumstances, a couple of our players have been sadly unable to make it in terms of this session this week. But nevertheless, it's so good to have the world state kind of available for public consumption, and also just to hang out and have a little bit of clerical duty done and under our belts.
Everything is content.
Everything is content.
Yeah. So here we now have them paired up with their the officer and their apprentice lower officer next to them, so that when we deal with them, we can see who is paired with who in a structural way. It's a little easier to see this way, instead of having to go, okay, fourth is assigned to the first lieutenant, or what? And so now you can actually see.
Yeah, exactly. So, pardon, that really is almost everything. Almost, I should say, everything for the crew as it stands. The only thing,
and there are some things here that would be useful to flesh out a little later. I know you spoke at length about a few things, but I might have missed a couple of things, and some stuff might not have any decisions made yet, so I'm leaving them blank. But responsibilities I'd might like to go over with you. Doesn't have to be right now, but at some point, but we can move on to something else if we want to do something fresh.
I'm perfectly fine with responsibilities in terms of like. Hang on, gotta get the words because I'm trying to go too fast. What's wonderful about the responsibilities of certain positions aboard the ship is that they're self-explanatory. So the ship's chaplain, for instance, their liability is going to be responsible for the healing and maintenance not only of the crew, but of contracted members' bodily health and potentially spiritual health. That can become a bit of a thorny subject when it comes to devils and demons, surprise, surprise. But liabilities services as a chaplain are mainly literally constrained to the clerical work. And by clerical, I mean clerical. Clerical.
That was good.
But yeah, making sure that some cure wounds are pumped out at a price and that, people aren't dying. The actual sort of medical corps, I'm coming to realize, is real bad considering I don't have a strict medical corps. So we'll go ahead and say that that's going to be Emma Jean, that as the steward, she is in charge of like the biological and corporeal health of the crew and any persons aboard.
No, can you break that down a little simpler? What that would entail?
I don't know. How can I break that down?
Let me Google ship steward.
Sure. It'll be something completely different than what we're describing here. Just as a forewarning.
Sure. Oh, you're right. It's not a chef. She's not a chef. Instead of a ship steward, a steward is a position, though. Are you?
Yeah. How can I put it? How can I put it? Ship's medical officer, like that's really the only thing that comes to mind. Yeah, chief medical officer or chief medical chief officer in charge of the medical.
What do you mean by corporeal health specifically, as opposed to medical?
No difference. Literally no difference.
You were just riffing.
I was being clever. I should stop being clever. But yeah, they're so the cleric, the chaplain, the chaplain and the steward sort of overlap because obviously but like the cleric comes at it from a spiritual side, a divine side, and the steward comes at it from more of a scientific side. Is that a fair? At least in terms of them as people. Well, I would think. Okay, this might be a very, very weird distinction, but I think that the steward would be in charge not of the crew, but of the passengers aboard the ship. Like they are sort of acting as a steward to those who find themselves aboard the ship. So more often than not with liability, there is that tinge of literally, I'm a cleric, I'm helping you like live through the power of, the path of light. Whereas with Imogene, it would be more, I have a responsibility to maintain the physical well-being of persons aboard this ship.
Okay, so would this be fair? Cleric responsible for the physical and spiritual well-being of the crew, and chief officer in charge of the physical health of passengers.
Yeah, that I think would be a fair assessment.
It didn't tell me. Well-being is hyphenated?
Is well-being hyphenated?
Chad,
give us your opinion. Is well-being hyphenated?
Yes, it is hyphenated.
Ugh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know, it pains you. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to be less... Yeah, I know.
Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. There we go.
I'll be less facetious with my description of...
I mean, yeah, it really is, again, that sort of self-explanatory mood of it. Like, guess what the galley cook does aboard this ship?
Now, does the galley cook also cook for the passengers?
That was something that I struggled with for a while. I believe so. I believe there would be...
prepares the meal.
Yeah, I would believe that there are private, like, contracted merchants who are in charge of, like, food available to the passengers, which might be of a differing quality than what Succulent serves, although he would resent that statement adamantly. Yeah, that's about right. Like if there's somebody with just some predilection against the merchants aboard, he'll do that for a price. It's sort of like eating at a ship's cafeteria instead of the sort of... What cruise ship am I talking about where they have private like restaurants and whatnot? That happens, right? Cruise ships are really complicated nowadays.
There is like the buffet, but then there might also be restaurants in the ship.
Yeah, I'm sure I wasn't going crazy. I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like a thing. So. And if it isn't a thing, it should be a thing. Oh, and Mercy's
Um,
responsibility description is perfectly on point. I think that.
let's see. Contracted. All right. And I'm just gonna leave these guys. It's just we haven't really defined exactly what they sell or what kind of stuff. I get the idea that the Dwarven Brothers are a bar, but they might sell other things.
Might the bioluminescent drow as well. They are certainly probably more refined fare offered to the more discerning palate. Again, Hamish would resent that implication. A lot of resentment going on amidst the people in charge of fixing food on this ship. Yeah. Alcoholic.
I'm removing gourmet from the dwarves.
Oh, come on.
With dwarvish alcoholic beverage.
With specifically Dwarvish, they have no idea how to make any other drinks at all.
Artisan. I'll call them artisan instead of gourmet. No, I'm gonna call. Actually, no, hold on. That makes more sense for Hamish. Gourmet is too fancy. Artisan is like I mulled my own rosemary in a mason jar for this.
Let's call it rustic alcoholic beverages.
Beautiful. Please tell me that the bioluminescent one is just glowing alcohol.
Sure. It is now. Every single drink is glowing. Yes, even the water. Don't ask what's in it.
See, I don't want to use the word exotic.
Let's use...
Thesaurus to the rescue.
Thesaurus to the rescue, indeed. Chat, help us.
Elegant?
Elegant. That's a descriptor.
We'll characterize them.
Yeah. That's a descriptor. That's a positive thing, right?
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Elegant, rustic, and artisan.
All right. So we've filled out a little bit more of this thing. I have some notes about the Keeper of Armament, and let's do the Keepers real quick.
Sure.
I have some notes. So I have Keeper of the Contract.
Yes. Consternation. Face claim of Jeff Bridges, if I'm not mistaken. Which I'm just...
Yeah, he's the dude.
Well, I was thinking more...
Oh, you're thinking more like True Grit.
Yeah, either True Grit or Crazy Heart, kind of.
Right,
yeah,
good.
Like the less like laid back, because I mean, with a name like Consternation, guess what? You're not a pleasant guy to be around. But again, I think that's just gonna be whenever I talk shit about my characters. Again, they would resent that statement. Oh boy. Oh, I actually do like that that idea, Mad Rogue. The drow only making club and rave drinks, cocktails of like an absolutely needlessly complicated.
There's little ice cubes that like glow, just like flash.
Exactly. They've got like some weird names like Fairy's Tooth Rot or something like that. Dang it, I want half these drinks to be real. That's the problem. Especially with the mixology class. You've created some very interesting flavor profiles that just beg adaptation.
I made one of them for the Nerdsmith cookbook. The Infernal Toddy, which is a mulled cranberry mulled cranberry bourbon drink. It was quite good. I did make the mistake of using raw cranberry juice, which required the use of 8 tablespoons of honey in order for it to be even remotely palatable. So I highly recommend you just use sweetened cranberry juice.
Yeah, that just, it's okay to go.
Yeah, I'm adjusting the recipe to just say use 8 or more tablespoons of honey, or just use sweetened cranberry.
One or the other, because
yeah, how much honey do you have, or how much cranberry juice do you have?
How much sweetened cranberry juice specifically? Oh. In progress, business dealings ensures that such deals adhere to high standards and tracks their traps paperwork on behalf of patrons. Cost of being aboard the final rites is a lack of privacy, and the keeper of contracts is an ever-present reminder. Yep. Again, just a lovely guy. You'd love to meet him. Eamon Gallo Dodger. Eamon. He was fun to come up with. Him and Bailey. That was very, very wonderful.
I love them. I love their relationship. They haven't even been in the same room really yet, and it's just like the.
I like the. I like the mere existence of these two characters in a relationship, even though they've had literally no interaction. I don't think, as yet. Could be wrong.
What are the crystals called? They're called something.
Motivating or motivation crystals. Which is the fancy term for soul stones, like basically like literal portions of like death that demons use because hey, it's the PC version of what's going to be forthcoming in Avernus. Descent to Avernus? Descent in Avernus?
The Descent.
The Descent. No, not that one. This one.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Jason, just letting you know that we definitely want to look at that when it comes
Absolutely.
out. I'm very excited to look at that content. Felt very on brand. We kept hearing things going, oh shit.
Yep. It's very much something that we can certainly look into. And perhaps.
Okay, so responsibilities.
No, keep going.
So, Keeper of the Engines. Their responsibilities are maintenance of the arcane engines and their motivating crystals, which control the movement, magic dampening, and power on board.
I'll say...
Any necessary magic dampening?
I'll say defense systems as well, just as a general point. The defense systems and... any magical dampening, any needed magical dampening on board final rites. Yep. That's about right.
And then armament, I have what do you call it? Custodian of any weapons registered to a personal.
Yep.
Confiscated?
Registered.
Or there's a word.
Yeah. Registered to persons coming aboard the final rites.
And let's see. Yes, hello MTMJ Moondog. Welcome to the stream.
What a name.
We're world.
Yes, hello MTMJ Moondog. I really, really love the name.
Custodian of any weapons registered to passengers on board, and in charge or trying to figure out how to say make sure that person
and issuant of all weaponry or
overseer of any crew.
Purveyor of all crew weapons. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's make sure. Ooh, contracts was very elaborate. Keeper of the Hull might warrant.
Oh, just a little. You've only met him like every single session.
He's just grumpy.
You somehow pissed him off.
Grumpy pants. That's his response.
Yeah. Ship's bosun, officer in charge of equipment and inventory of equipment and crew members. Yeah.
I could break that down a little bit more into other.
A surly. Do you know the color of Bahazet?
Bronze.
Yep. Pop quiz.
I swear I wasn't looking at my Excel spreadsheet right next to me. There's stuff on top of the spreadsheet. I can't see anything on it right now.
Cheater!
But it was there. It was there as a security blanket.
You failed the pop quiz.
Early Bond's Dragonborn who occasionally has mating signal feathers on his head.
That was okay.
I'm sorry. That's the fiction in the fiction.
Bit of meta discussion once again. He is a.
I assumed he was a totem barbarian.
Yes, he was, and he specifically has sea motifs. So he actually had the aspect of, I can't remember specifically at the moment, but it was like one of the birds of paradise. Like, so whenever it was the aspect of the eagle mechanically. Yeah. So it's like his eyes can see for like a mile clearly and unobstructed by like magical or whatever. But no,
that's not that one yet.
No, that's I think the second or the third one. But with the way that I flavored it, I had it be sort of a physical consequence where the sort of ridiculous plumage of the birds of paradise sprouted from his head whenever he activated these powers, and somehow, for whatever reason,
you mean Mercy liking to go off on a flight of fancy? Because
I'm gonna hang up this call.
Bye everybody. It was great talking to you all.
No, but yes, that apparently you think that means that he's got the hots for Nowhere, whom he has established.
I love it so much. I love the idea that she'll just refuse to believe him if he says, like, I'm not even going to entertain that with the response. That's not a no. Like, I'm just waiting for that moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's wonderful. But yeah.
All right, so ship's bosun, officer in charge of the maintenance and inventory of equipment and crew members.
Yep.
Okay.
I would say, and scheduling amongst crew members. I don't know. But what were you going to type? No, just
keeps crew members in line is what I was going to say.
Sure. Yeah.
I was gonna say oversees crew member scheduling and not behavior, but I'm trying to think of a word for good behavior. Basically,
it could order? It could be behavior, like literally. So oversees crew members or crew member scheduling and behavior.
There's a word I'm losing there.
In terms of overseas or in terms of behavior? Behavior. Morale
is one. Conduct. That was the word.
Conduct. Aha. We got there.
He's a teacher. He's a principal.
Yeah, pretty much. He's the worst principal.
Yeah, no, I understand. All right. So, yeah, I think we've at least filled out a good number of these. Shall we move to our NPC?
All right, yeah. Entering into the final stretch, I think it might be prudent
Yeah.
to move into the NPC, which,
All right.
which due to familiarity, I suppose would just have to be Hamish Crestmeyer, huh?
I'm so excited. So if you go into the article section of World Anvil, it's a little wonky right now because, again, half page. These normally don't look like that. They normally look better. But there is, let's find Hamish. I do have an article for him. And I'll go into the editor screen for Hamish. All right, so this is the character screen. It is labeled right now as a stub due to low word count. So that's sometimes that factors into writing challenges. That's all you need to know about that. So character sheet, there are a number of things that you can put into a character article. We can talk about the tabs in a little while, but those are the main tabs. We have smaller tabs. So vignette or freeform prose, that's where all the code for the crew page goes for my design. But there is a default design that comes from just virtue of having World Anvil. Oops, I didn't mean to click Discord. Don't worry about that. It's one of the problems with having my browser open. Okay, so
thank God your password was not visible.
It was not. The vignette freeform prose area shows up at the very top of the article. Let me load this article if I can view it. So there's nothing really here right now at all, remotely. But you can see his name.
Yep. He's got a name. Yep. He's got a name, folks.
He has an article. All right, so let's scroll back up. There are a couple of things here of note. The red section here is GM stuff. These are things that will not be visible unless you check this box that says show this to everyone with access to the article. Now, what this allows you to do is when you pick the kind of character you're dealing with. So let's say he's a recurring NPC. So he's what they call a plotter. So if I do that, you get a bunch of options for information. Now, I have realized that one of the things that this is really good for is notes for your GM if he wants to, for example, say, okay, I want to look up some stuff about Hamish. What did I write about him? So they also have examples which are really, really helpful. Proactiveness, like how do they behave? Fears, desires are a really great one. Speech patterns, if you want to remember how you voiced them, is really good there. I really like their default emotional state, sight, sound, smell, and touch that are associated with them. How do they behave when they are happy, sad, or angry? So you can have these little references for role play reference as a DM.
Yeah. It really just seems like all of the sort of character work that you can do internally just down on a page that you can reference to without having to worry about, oh, well, wait a minute, are my players going to see this? Like, will I have to drop the facade? No, like you've got a full list that you can revert to if you get lost within the menagerie of NPCs that we DMs come up with and foist upon ourselves because we have nothing better to do. And suddenly,
these are for just example. I'm not actually going to be
absolutely.
Using these.
I would not say that he would keep a stone cold face in terms of his sadness or whatnot, but
hard to read.
Hard to read. Sure.
It's only hard to read for other people. I'm going to, for the sake of it, I'm going to call him a guide. There are different things you could call them. They sort of, or like a mentor. Sure, mentor. We'll say he's a mentor. I'm going to do this so that when I save it, I will refresh the page and you can kind of see what's
exactly.
GM notes what I have seeded with.
He seems to have it bad for Jovi. Sure. That's what
it's fine. No, it's fine. I wrote whatever. So what happens? Ooh, hold on. I think I need to check the box. Sorry, it's weird when you go half screen like this.
Well, and again, it's just those things that are subject to change, you know.
Okay, so
Hey.
again, I'm working on this. I'm working on the CSS right now, so I had not actually formatted the GM screen yet. So this is not as helpful. But when you zoom out a little bit, you can see how it's actually formatted. This will be more legible next time I play with this because I will now know I have to adjust this.
Yeah.
But it shows up at the very, very top of the article. So when, say, if Jason is clicking into it, he can click over and go, oh, right, that's information about that character. I don't have to go read through the extended entry or the extended article in order to find this information. And this is not stuff that people necessarily need to know about the character. These are mostly performance notes or motivation notes and stuff for the DM.
Right. Unless you are explicitly presenting an NPC that is supposed to be very kind and whatnot, and labeling them nemesis, like at which point you might want to keep that, on the down low.
So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to uncheck this. Now, one of the reasons I couldn't see it, I remember now, is because this article is not technically mine. This article was started by the Nerdsmith account. Now, in order for Jason to be able to use this, I'm going to change the author to Jason. This will allow him to be able to see that stuff without, if he wants to use this information, he can use them.
Exactly.
And I won't necessarily see what he's written here. He can have it just on his own. I promise not to snoop around where I don't belong.
Lies. Players always snoop.
I'm sort of in here. I don't. But okay, so if you get past the,
Sorry.
Well, when I'm making the world anvil for DMs, it's like I'm gonna see shit.
Yeah.
I have a good poker face. How about that? I am more interested in my character experiencing something than me knowing the secrets.
Exactly.
So you go to the NPCs area. We looked around that a little bit. A lot of that is, like I said, reference for the DM to remember information. Then we have our generic article information. So let me real quick refresh this, get rid of that. So we're back to the blank article. So this is probably shit that either Jason doesn't know yet or I'm not supposed to know, because year of birth, I don't know how old Hamish is. But so these are basic profile information. A lot of this stuff is going to show up in the sidebar that's over here. Let's see if there's anything here we can fill out. So
circumstances of death, yes.
Yes, please tell me that, Jason, if you don't mind.
No.
I don't know if you have any of this sort of physicality information. Eye color, hair color, we kind of know. Hair color is like that sort of ashy gray, right?
Yeah, that's sort of, given what we know about the face claim that you so eloquently picked, which we have...
Oh, you mean hot Italian beard model? Yes.
Yeah, hot
He
Italian. He
literally has a sponsorship with a beard oil company. Like, it's that serious, you guys.
I mean, yeah, it really does.
Alessandro Manfredi, I believe is his name.
God, that name.
Yup.
It's a marvelous
name. It's the name of an Italian beard model. Beard.
Or a beer model. We don't know. He could very well be a beer model very soon. I don't.
I'm gonna share it with you guys. If you don't come back from chat because you're too busy looking at Hamish, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm thirsty? No. Not at all.
Yeah, you're a mixologist. If you're thirsty, there's something gone wrong.
Yeah, can't be thirsty. So, what do you think would his height be? Is he tall?
How tall is Jovi?
Is... Let me find out. I think I have her information. She's 5'10". She's 5'10".
Okay, he would probably be well beyond the height of 6 foot. So, I don't know, 6'4". 6'4" sounds like a height.
Son. Damn.
A tall fella. Lanky fella.
I have never really felt the need to explain weight so much as I might put like what his build would be. Like, I
200 kilograms.
there you go.
3,000
14
kilograms.
stone.
14 stone.
I have no
don't
idea.
know what that is. Why are two Americans talking about stone weight?
Apologies
but yeah,
to anybody on stream that might be like, fucking Americans.
Yeah, I see what you mean by the weight sort of indicating a build rather than like a specific number.
There might here was what I would say. I would almost skip the weight section because I know for a fact there is a physical description section. So these are just, this is the snapshot of the character. Ethnicity is based on articles. This is a feature of World Anvil that I actually really like. Some of the sections, if you hadn't, I think maybe in a very early iteration of World Anvil, if you didn't have an article built, you'd have to go, crap. You'd have to save your work, go back, make a new article, then come back. I know what they've been able to code now, Demetrius, you're amazing, is create a new article and link it. So what it'll do is it'll make a stub article, like a placeholder, with that entry so that if you have something you need to fill out, you can quick make the article and then move on. You can go back to it later. And it will actually show up in your to-dos when you make new articles and don't fill in things. It gives you a to-do with a checklist so you can remember to do things. Species, right now I only have tiefling written out, but again, I don't know what species Hamish might be. He seems human.
Certainly seems that way.
Yeah. Current location, presumably the River Styx. Final Rites is a vehicle rather than a location, and I don't know how I feel about that. We might change that. That's up to you, Jason. We can talk about it. And basically how we'd have to make that decision is look at the difference of options in the boxes, like what fill-in boxes you have for vehicle versus location, and sort of decide which one makes more sense.
Exactly, yeah.
Character portrait. Now, here's the thing, you guys. Just so you know. I believe... Well, maybe not. Maybe I can't do it here. I was able to before.
Wait,
upload an image.
Wait, do you actually have?
Oh, you haven't seen the Photoshop I did? I gotta show you.
Oh, not the Photoshop. No.
I have a picture that is nice and vague that I made for Jovi's Heroes account.
Hey.
And I will upload that so we have access to it.
Was that the one of the arm?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, it's the one with the arm.
Yeah, that worked.
Upload image. All right. So what happens when you upload an image? Just so you can see, you upload an image and you get an image code, which also appears right here. You can copy it and paste it wherever you want. I personally am not going to use the drop down here for the character portrait because the character portrait shows up in the sidebar, like in the box. I like having the image above the box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it in a minute. Related prose articles. So if you had, say, for example, we make a mixologist article. I'm going to do that right now so I remember to do it. So mixologist.
Efficiency.
Yes, mixologist will now be an article. I'll get a reminder to fill that in later, but now in the sidebar, you will see related articles. Mixologist. It's like, oh, he's a mixologist. I wonder what that is. And you click on that. So what we have now is we have a little bit of a... Oh, okay, so this is a little different. It says appears in. So if there are related articles or journal entries or something that would make sense that he would appear in, you'd put it in there.
Maybe one that was penned by, I don't know, our very own Angela.
Okay, so that is a good question. They don't appear in here. So maybe that's something I should talk to Demetrius about. That whether or not journal entries for characters, whether we can tag as being like, I want to be able to put it into an article. Let me make a note of that just so I remember.
By the way, Demetrius is our one of our points of contact.
He's the coder. He is the main and sole coder right now on this entire website. He's incredible. Yeah,
the main and sole coder, done an absolutely out of the park job with everything that has come out. To say that he works relentlessly is an understatement. Like, that man's a juggernaut to my mind. Like, and honestly, Demetrius, if ever you stumble upon this, thank you so
He
much for all the
watches
work.
the show. He's a self-proclaimed fan of Final Rites.
Well,
so
good.
I am incredibly touched that he enjoys the show so much.
We're thankful for your fanaticism. We're even more thankful for the service that you provide. Shout out to everybody over at World Anvil because they need it. Sometimes.
All right, so let me put this image real quick. There's the design tab. The design tab has all the like how you want something to look. Excerpt is the thing that I described as being the little pop-up. So let's call him. He's the master mixologist on board the Final Rite.
Yeah. That's an apt description.
Then I want, okay, so sidebar content. What's nice is there's a little picture. This is where this information goes. I want it to go over the panel content. So on top of the panel, as opposed to in the panel. Save it. That's where the image code went. So now you have a little picture above the sidebar.
Right.
All right.
Well, all
right, let's go back to
well, I would also assume that in terms of like the appears in Jovi's article as it stands would be sort of a part of that. If ever.
Sure, I could say that that's an associated, like,
right,
her history with Hamish before she came on board, and which you can find as bonus content on nerdsmith.org if you subscribe.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about Nerdsmith, but
we'll touch on it at the end. But yeah, we'll talk about Nerdsmith. Later. We need subscriptions. Give us subscriptions.
Yes, please help support the creators, and if you like this stuff, please help support us.
Yeah, honestly.
All right, so back to the character builder. So we went through the profile. Now there's naming convention. Given name is family name is Crestmeyer. That's the last name if you don't technically think it's family name.
Sure.
You could have a nickname or an alias or an honorific or title. I don't know if Hamish has any of those, but he's mostly just known as Hamish, at least so far.
Would he have a middle name?
He's got a fancy fucking name, so I don't know.
Hamish Crestmeyer. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later.
Sure. All right, so that's naming. Very simple. Let's save just for the sake of it and what that did. Because he did have a title already. All right, so it might be slightly redundant to do that in this particular case because there's no, we didn't put anything in the little vignette section yet. We might do something. But so let's, for now, unnecessary. Sometimes you have these and they are necessary because the idea would be you'd have the character name of the article and then or maybe your article title is something other than the character's name. Maybe you have Keeper of the Ledger and then you have Nowhere's name or something like that. But so the idea would be if you had the name as the title and then a big paragraph of text, you would maybe need a reminder. This is the name of the person we're talking about.
Exactly.
Or if again they have a title, some sort of honorific or something, you'd have their full moniker underneath.
Yep.
That makes it easier for your article to not be called Percival von Frederick Strangerell III. You could have, there's extra, but you could have the title be Percival, and then his full honorific would be that next line.
Exactly. But that there is levels of degree to which you can always take it. And again, to say that it's versatile is just an understatement. Like it's really wonderful work. Now I see we have gone to the mental aspects of the character. A very fun and interesting bit. Yes. I'm not alone. Oh no.
Everything's fine. All right, so the mental tab is it's a mix of personality and behavioral characteristics and some it mixes a little bit into like intelligence, quote unquote, education and intelligence. Those are different, but yeah. So personal history. So if you want to refine the history, you could also create a timeline and attach that timeline to this article. So say in the event that you were writing, say, a novel or something, you could say, Hamish has a whole freaking timeline full of history. There's so many things that happened. You could make a Hamish timeline and then put it in this article. So that would be pretty cool.
Exactly. Like with most wikias, you can have it be sort of labeled however you wish, but with this one in particular, it's broken down so effortlessly. The formatting is very easy to get a hold of as soon as you sort of finagle what you're doing. But even the categories that are there, personal history, education, mental trauma, accomplishments, and achievements, employment, all these things that can be aspects of a character are considered, and you can use them to your heart's delight. And I'm assuming as keeps in, because I actually haven't really created a character article. I'm assuming physical, personal, social, all of those sorts of things tap into different aspects of the character. Be it
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're very extensive. It's almost, see, I've argued before that there's almost too much here, but the idea is it is thorough so that whatever you want to put in, you can put in. You can leave out as much as you want or include as much as you want, but they were incredibly comprehensive in the kinds of detail you might want to put in your character. I have occasionally defaulted to just using the BB code, the Blackboard code, and just use the vignette box if you want something very specific for your design. But there's a lot of stuff in here that almost work as a almost character survey. You want to learn about your character, you want to fill things out, you might want to do this just to brainstorm a character that you haven't thought about yet, or you haven't thought about in this level of detail. Again, stop me if you have something to add into one of these, Jason, but let's go over what's in here.
Sure.
So under the mental tab, you have personal history, education or training, employment history, accomplishments and achievements, things that they might, it says accomplishments and failures shape who we are. Use these sections to describe characters' life-shaping moments and their resolutions. So accomplishments and achievements, failures and embarrassments. So on the flip side, you don't necessarily have to say, oh, this good thing happened. It's like, no, this terrible thing happened.
I got completely screwed this one time.
Yeah, like Jovi's got a failure and embarrassment section.
Yeah.
Mental trauma. So any personal phobias or any traumatic events that might inform the character's behavior. Intellectual characteristics. So what is the mental capabilities of this person? Are they, and the examples here are, do they think of the world in a spatial way, in a linguistic way, musical, philosophical? How do they see the world and how do they approach the world is a way that I would define this intellectual characteristics section.
Right.
You could say like someone's very, so like Jovi, for example, she's not incredibly bookish, but she does really latch on to the idea of like sort of the artisan quality of what mixology is. And so she studies very hard to sort of make sure she's doing things correctly. She has a natural aptitude for it, partly because she was an alchemist apprentice at one point, so she really understands the principles of potion making. So it's really just a hop, skip, and a jump to making cocktails. And so she has an aptitude for that, and I would probably put all that in the intellectual characteristics section.
Exactly. And again, it's that sort of consideration that were it not labeled and sort of laid out and your thought process is spurred on, it would be second nature or unstated, and to be able to put it out there is very, in a concrete fashion, very, very beneficial, especially when it comes to character work. Like the one that most interested me when it came to when it came to the GM notes was speech patterns, because as Angela can attest, I adore using accents and and being able to actually keep a record of like how Hamish sounds at any one point, or how liability sounded, or Eamon.
Hamish especially, because what I initially thought had been a linguistic hiccup on your part ended up just turning into an active choice. And that's an important note. And honestly, with Hamish changing speech patterns, swapping accents based on his context, that might be a good note to put in if he were new to this. Like, Jason's amazing at doing this, but if he wanted to, he could put a note in that says, among trusted individuals, he drops this accent and speaks like this, but when he's performative, when he's dealing with the public, he speaks like this. And so he could have that note there to remind himself of that context.
Right. But even then, it's the same thing as keeping, pardon, accent notes for Captain Devereaux very growly, and also not being afraid to just let your mind have that lapse of like, okay, wait a minute, how does this character sound like? And then slipping back into it, because it's so hard to, again, have these menagerie of NPCs sort of at will command, and it's like, all right, let me take a minute as I, surreptitiously go to my notes and start flipping through, because, it's just one of those things that happens. It's especially in the context of RPGs, even in creative writing, being able to communicate a character's voice or speech patterns or mood or their face, having a totem pole that you can turn to, and having a marker where you can literally refer back to this sort of very specific quirk that you might have in a character's expression of sadness within a story, is something that adds flesh and adds substance to your processes. So I really was appreciative of the fact that was actually a thing, and I'll be definitely using that way more often.
Well, and it occurred to me, one of the things that I've been struggling with at first was it's great from a public side, being able to sort through and see the characters, but it didn't seem as useful for a DM to be on the front end of World Anvil. And it occurred to me that the article section is where I would go as a DM. I wouldn't necessarily use the front end, because you're able to do sorting by category, and you can see like the list of alphabetical. Because one of the things that I've kind of struggled a little bit, just full disclosure, is the idea that, we're keeping a spreadsheet of all this stuff. World Anvil makes a lot of sense for someone who wants to be sharing that information with the public in a very digestible way. But I'm still working on that bit of a disconnect between how easy it is to just have a spreadsheet of information right at your fingertips versus having things specifically built in World Anvil, and how DMs can start accessing that information. That is something that I've been working with, trying to figure out what the best solution for that is, if there is one. That is something that I want to engage with the overall World Anvil community and see how they do it. Because there's plenty of DMs that use this as their reference material. So I'm very curious about how the other people approach that. That's one thing that I've been, like I said, struggling a little bit, trying to figure out what a good method of being able to reference as a DM. There is a search bar, but the search bar is about article titles, I believe. Not content. So anyway, back to the article. Morality and philosophy is a very interesting one. You can start talking about how you see the world, how you approach the world, what your attitude about other people is, can really inform your character, figuring out what their general worldview is. Sexuality is pretty self-explanatory. I very much appreciate that they have gender identity. That's where you could put pronouns that you go by, or how you identify in terms of your gender as a character. So Hamish uses he, him pronouns, correct?
Correct, yes. And he is male presenting, so...
Okay.
I would say that would be the sort of gender identity that is associated with him most strongly at the moment. And a little bit of a teaser, that may not have been the form or the identity that he was always associated with.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is something that I definitely want to emphasize as someone who has access to our Excel spreadsheet, that there are characters that we have met in the game that at least originally, and Jason, I assume this might still be the case, but I'm not sure if it still is. There are characters in the crew that are trans, are non-binary. It just hasn't come up, and one of the things that I had sort of learned that through reading a couple of things about gender presentation and dealing with gender identity in games, that a good rule of thumb when, say, portraying trans characters in a game is don't necessarily talk about it unless they are the kind of person who would be open about it. So that idea of, I'm always a little torn sometimes between wanting to be clear about the fact that I'm trying to present characters of different gender identities, but then also just trying not to make it feel too much like virtue signaling. I try to make it feel more natural. And if you don't say something, many people won't assume something. So I think sometimes it's important to be overt and very upfront with things, because if you don't say anything, like, for example, when you're dealing with, say, a podcast and you're dealing with characters that are of a different race, something you might not notice unless you actually see a picture of the character. If you don't have art for that character, if you don't describe their appearance in some sort of biography or in the podcast, you might not realize at all that there are characters that are meant to be represented in a certain way. And I don't know if that matters. That doesn't always matter to everybody, but it feels like when I'm playing and this is really off topic, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. No, we've got time.
When we're playing Shenanigans, Adelaide is a Black woman, and I realized that at no point in the podcast did I ever say that. It's only in the artwork and in the little bio, and we had a couple of times, and I think I messed up every single time. We had a couple of introductory opportunities to talk about our characters, and I don't think I ever described her, ever. And I feel really terrible about it, because if you don't overtly say something like that, if you have a majority white audience potentially, they might just assume. And I wanted to make sure that I was adding more diversity into our cast than we had. So yeah, this was a really roundabout tangent about the idea that we have characters in our NPC cast that have differing gender identities that have not yet been addressed. But I really like the fact that World Anvil has that section for gender identity, so that we can actually explicitly state it in the bios. And if it comes up in story, it comes up, but it has been established. So it's not coming out of nowhere, but there are words that are just destroyed because we have names that are words.
Yeah, there's so many things. Obviously, the inclusion of gender identity and all these sorts of things, if you wish to select it as a part of the character, to my mind, it only adds to the story. There is nothing in any of these categories, be it taboos, be it known languages, be it morality, philosophy, be it gender identity, that subtracts from the character. Yeah. Being able to explicitly communicate that in a sort of clinical or a clerical substantive way that says that, yes, this person is female to male trans, this person is gender queer, this person is XYZ, or this entity, this individual, however you phrase it. Being able to have that, again, as a reference point, again, adds to the character, adds to the world that you are constructing. And whether or not those issues are approached by the subject matter that you personally conduct does not mean that these things are irrelevant, or does not mean that you need to never acknowledge or even refuse to state, yes, this is what this person is, or this is what that character represents, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. It's so much more impactful to, in the moment, acknowledge that, yes, this character is trans, this character is, this character is black, this character is white, this character is any ethnicity that you can.
Yeah, when you're dealing in fantasy, ethnicity is also so intrinsically, or race is so intrinsically tied with ethnicity or like geographic background that it might be like they're Southeast Asian, but like in a fantasy world. Like they appear to be of Southeast Asian ancestry. Like you could say something like that, but it would just be
right. It's very difficult. But again, it's these portions of the character that introduce themselves that are apparent within fiction that you're trying to communicate out of fiction, and having these categories and having these sorts of things on World Anvil specifically. This has become a bit of a praiseworthy thing of World Anvil, but they really do a fantastic job. They to have it just up as a list of the considerations can spur you on to maybe viewing characters in a more comprehensive light than just words on a page. I personally have tried many creative writing exercises, and always I find myself, after a certain point, struggling to continue with the characterization that I've invoked in previous passages in contexts that are new and exciting. So being able to, let's say for any aspiring novelist or what have you, to have all of this information right there in front of your face, laid out so beautifully, is very powerful and very, very appreciated, especially when you get, and I'm sure, Angela, you can probably sympathize with this, to the slog of some of these projects where you kind of are trying to find out new ways to sort of describe what a character would do, or would find out how the evolution of this character would be. Well, by establishing them at the forefront and not having to retcon or not having to make up for lost time in relation to descriptors, getting it out on paper, quote unquote, it in front of your eyes and just all organized in your head is just one of the many, many boons I think that this program provides. Yeah. This has become a very, very long-winded endorsement of World Anvil. It's an infomercial. But in terms of Hamish as a character, circling back around with
he's so sad. He's
very precious dog in the background.
He's got his back to me like, you're not paying attention. I'm so sorry, buddy. Anyway, so I had a question then. I was filling things in as you were talking. I was listening. But so Hamish's employment, at least his current employment, I can attest to. Currently contracted on board Final Rites as a merchant and mixologist. We've never talked about the status of the place that Jovi and Hamish work. We've described it as being a bar, or as being potentially in the pool room, poker room, billiard room.
It is squarely within, a section of the ship that is quartered off for those contracted merchants who are aboard the Final Rites. Specifically, I think that Hamish would have an establishment of his own, like either
like an actual room or like a pop-up sort of thing.
The way that I envisioned it at first was sort of like retail space within a strip mall, that you were given like quarters within the ship that you can modify based on your needs and whatnot, expand based on your needs, but that you can also bring aboard your own sort of personal transportation gear. So whereas in contrast, the trio of Dwarven brothers are very much like, this is our bar that was provided by the concierge crew, Hamish would probably have modified it based on his personal tastes, hanging silks that would shield the lighting sources and creating a more intimate atmosphere. Maybe even the cart that he used for the longest time being actually brought aboard as kind of a means by which they can that Hamish and y'all can actually vend or otherwise like store your store your shit, like just to put it in the most bare bones of terms. Like it's delineating between the workspace and the personal space of the room that was provided to you.
Okay. Would the bar that we work at be like a physical bar, or would it be something that? Okay.
Yeah, most definitely. The bar that y'all are currently at was constructed by concierge crew for the explicit purpose of Hamish's business operations.
Okay. Any sense of there actually being a store name, or do you think Hamish is the kind to be like, I don't have a name, they just know to come here?
Given what I know of Hamish, yeah, that's really, yeah. I don't have a name. You come here.
It's just Hamish's. It's just,
yeah, Hamish and Jovi's. Like that's like
aww,
maybe he'll have.
Yeah, you'd just be known as like they're the ones who work it. We know it's their bar.
Yeah, so go there if you want something real good.
All right. Do you have any thoughts about any of the other intellectual or mental options, or are these sort of not sure or not ready to illuminate those things?
I think for the present time period, a lot of these can be not left, quote unquote, left blank, but that they can be filled in as needed.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
If I were going to fill in anything,
you don't have to.
If I were going to fill in anything, I would rather it be off stream, because there are some interesting character tidbits. Hello, whoever was in the background.
That was my husband.
Hello, husbando. But if there are going to be certain things, I would rather it be discussed off stream, because I want to keep some things in store for the audience. Ooh. Yes.
Some things are too
sneaky, but then they can visit the article and then spoil it for themselves. So yeah.
There you go. All right, so then let's try to push through a couple things. We've got about 10 minutes left, so let's see how much we can fill in. So physical traits, physical section. Use this as a way to quickly describe your character in less than 3 sentences. Their fitness, agility, body shape, any physical aids that they use, any illnesses or afflictions they might have. Hamish is a hipster.
Yeah, that's really about it. Like the quintessential sort of artisan barman. Appears to be an older gentleman, roughly, I would say 40 to 60 years old.
In good physical shape, I guess.
Yeah.
In with an athletic physical.
With a retired adventurer's physical build. I don't know how to communicate that.
Nope, that's exactly.
Yep. Conditions.
That's if you decided to make an article with a condition like different illnesses, or I, for example, in Countless Heroes, I had an article that was reincarnation was a condition, so that if somebody had been reincarnated, you could use that as a condition. And then in that article, it talked about how Logan ran reincarnation rituals and what that sort of meant in some cultures, and you were able to sort of give some cultural context for that. So distinct from gender identity, they had biological sex. If that's something that isn't, they at least gave you some options of how you would choose to describe a character if you so desired.
Exactly.
Body features,
hot. Just H with 7 O's and then a T.
Well, okay, so skin tone, what are the examples? Skin tone, hair, other. We already talked about his hair color, but he has a very, very Coiffed is not the word I'm looking for. That's a little too
well maintained.
soft, but yeah.
Yeah. Full, well maintained, full, well groomed. Yeah.
That was
there it is. Full, well groomed beard, and
I think that's right.
Is it handlebar? I thought handlebar was.
He has a little curl to it.
Is that handlebar?
Yeah, I think so.
Excuse us, stream, while we search up the proper term for mustachioed.
While we continue to make our Google search results really interesting.
Yes.
Our Google search history. Yes, a handlebar mustache is. It resembles the handlebars of a bicycle. It's curled, and you.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
When I looked up handlebar mustache, it was nothing but hipsters. Nothing. And one picture of a very, very old, like 1900s, 1800s gentleman. Everything else was hipster.
That works. That works indeed. All right. Yeah. Identifying features.
I could just use the article title about the face claim for him. Tattooed silver fox.
I sure. If you will, of course. If you will.
Mm-hmm. And we do.
And we do indeed.
All right, so body features.
Mm-hmm.
He's got what? I mean, if we're gonna go with the face claim, he's got sort of olive skin.
Right. Yeah. What would it be?
That's about all I got right now.
Yeah, would it be the beard would be under facial features, would it not?
Yeah, you're.
Ooh. Olive skin.
I mean, part of this is gonna be like, if he's. This is where you maybe put like if someone had like broad shoulders or if they were lanky. Well, he's very tall, so we could describe that he's like a very
long-limbed but average build. Yeah, he doesn't I don't think look like a spider. He's somebody who's like he's that tall, he's that wide, like you think, oh yeah, that's just how a 6'4" man looks. A 6'4" sexy Santa looks.
Yep.
Identifying features, obviously, with the tattoos that he has, that's certainly one that we can include. But beyond the physical, I saw that there were some other categories that maybe we can touch upon.
Apparel and accessories, specialized equipment that he might have. I would include in that potentially his if he had his own mixologist kit with materials, that would probably go under there.
Most likely.
And special abilities would also be a good one to touch upon.
And even then, again, for anybody who even struggles with like trying to come up with physical descriptions, at the end of there, what is that? A character prototype. Which actor would play your character? Which characters? Which famous characters have inspired this character or informed this character? Like, there are so many opportunities to really communicate who this person is or how they are, and yeah, it's really fun to toy around with.
I love casting people.
Yes, absolutely.
I love headcanons and casting.
Yes.
But I never like going obvious. I always like going for like E-list actors or like somebody from a super obscure indie film, or from, oh, there's this New Zealand television show that I caught on TV one time that I think this person would be.
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
Another one that I actually go to quite frequently are Olympic athletes. They really do. I think even
I use them as a touch point for just the sense of what an adventurer in D&D would be capable of. So you see, like, I think I've referenced this on Twitter before, that long image of all of the physicalities of people. It's like, these are all Olympic athletes. They are just specialized for very particular events, but it shows you the breadth of what would be considered a healthy athletic body. The definition of athletic is very different depending on what you need to be able to do. And so I love using that as an example.
Yeah.
Because there's men and women Olympic athletes that have that across, and you can kind of see, oh shit, yeah, my character would look like the shock putter because they're a barbarian and they need to be able to hit people real hard.
Yeah, I actually think that Bailey Gallow Dodger was based off of a shot putter that I stumbled across. Honestly, to say that there are 1.5 million ways to sort of skin this cat is really cruel, because don't skin cats, but like there are multiple ways to approach this system. And yeah, just at the end here, go ahead and throw out another message that World Anvil, by now you should hopefully realize, is one of the most comprehensive world building tools that you can honestly use. It's been a blast, Angela, for the past 3 hours or somewhat, to actually be able to sort of traipse through and look to the ways in which this system can really be used to communicate characters and communicate the world. So if you have not already started a free trial with World Anvil, do it yesterday. Do it as a favor to yourself if you're even passingly interested.
You should check it out at least, because they may or may not still be running their special since Heroes launched, 30% off their guild memberships. So you should take a look. And I mean, get it at a good price if you can. That's great. Rather, get it at a better price if you can. That's great.
Less than the cost of like a pack of upholstery pins, I'm sure. Probably. Look, check them out. They're really great folks.
Less than this Nerf gun.
Yes, that Nerf gun. Whatever that Nerf gun is.
That exact Nerf gun is.
That exact Nerf gun. No other Nerf guns.
Just as a final wrap up for this area, so you can kind of see what else you've got. Personal tab includes motivation, famous quotes, likes and dislikes, things that they virtues, vices, quirks, hygiene, stuff like that. And the social tab includes affiliated organizations. Again, you can make a new article if they're part of an organization. So if, say, the Final Rites crew was an organization, we could put that in. If the Mixologist Guild was an organization, we could put that in. Place of birth, current residence, any titles they might hold, whatever their wealth could be, social ties, so family, religion, friends, how they are in social situations. That's a good one that I can probably fill out a little bit for Hamish based on what we've seen already. Mannerisms, pets and hobbies, and speech patterns. If you happen to be making a deity, there's also the types of stuff that this deity might be associated with. So this is not for your character's deity. It is for a character that is divine. So just keeping that in mind, because I filled it out before and realized, oh, why is it labeling my character as a god? Because I wasn't supposed to fill it out. So anyway, that is what a character looks like. Let me save real quick because we filled out a bunch of stuff.
Yep, and then that'll be what we end on. Let's see what all has changed. Oh dear.
Hold on. I didn't save it.
You didn't save it. How dare you?
Come on, hold on.
Hold on here.
Oh, this article is not.
This article is not a work in progress.
Well, it is, but
it is, but
it is published though.
Hold on.
This is a great way to end. Is my saving isn't working.
Oh no.
Hold on. I just have been saved. Okay, let me add one more thing and see what happens.
Okay. Could it
Nope.
could it be under adventure journals?
No, that's specifically your that's actual like journal entries that you put in.
Ah, I see.
Oh yeah, Mad Rogue, I have an entire pantheon for Countless Heroes that I should share with you that you can see. It's very elaborate. This might just be an error. Hold on. This is real good for our final thing. Anyway, let's just call it. I will share it when I finish it with the Twitter.
Yeah.
So let me put our thing up so you can follow.
Yeah, with Mr. Twitter. We are on Mr. Twitter. Wait, that doesn't.
That's not a code.
That's not. No.
Well, I thought it was going to pop our code up.
Oh, well. We're actually on Twitter, Final Rites RPG, or at Final Rites RPG. Lovely little Twitter page run by half the crew here, Angela. But yeah, to say that I've enjoyed this entire process is an understatement. This was absolutely fantastic to be able to flesh out the world and to be able to have your audience and attention. As always, we are sponsored by Die Hard Dice and World Anvil. We've sung the praises of World Anvil nonstop for the past few hours.
3 hours.
3 hours. We can also go on another 3 hours if we could for Die Hard Dice and all the incredible work that they do. That'll be at dieharddice.com. dieharddice.com. And if you in any way, shape, or form wish to support the Nerdsmith Network, you yourself, yes, you the individual watching this video or attending the live audience, can go to nerdsmith.org and investigate ways to actually become a subscriber to the Nerdsmith Network directly, or you can subscribe to our Twitch, you can follow us on Twitter, you can signal boost, you can hang out with us in chat, you can do everything and anything to help support us. Every bit is appreciated and loved. And yeah,
you enrich our lives. So thank you. We all enjoy doing this, but your presence and enthusiasm and participation make it that much nicer.
Absolutely. So thank you to all who showed up in chat, Mad Rogue, and all the rest. We thank you so much for joining us. And if you're watching us on YouTube or the VOD, next session for the Final Rites, yes, the very campaign, is going to be July the 2nd, barring complication. So hopefully see you then. Take care of yourselves, drink some water, take care, go out and, I don't know, get some sun. You're basically a complicated houseplant with emotions. So, fair. Those of us assembled here are going to raid the lovely, lovely friend of the show, Susanna Grace, dear friend of mine, and yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. So good to see you. Adios.
Bye. I'm just gonna keep waving till.
Yeah, same here. I don't really know what to do.